Very quickly, my name is Ron Bourret. I'm a contractor here at Google, and I'm a technical writer on the Blockly team. And we're going to be talking about what's been going on with Blockly documentation. Here's our quick outline. You can read it faster than I can speak it, and you'll see it in a moment. The Blockly documentation, or the main documentation, is 150 topics in the developer's guide with more than 400 images. It's a very visual thing, and we have more than 3,600 reference topics. There's also, for historical reasons and for programming reasons, we have documentation in other places. We've got a separate set of code labs, a page with plugins and demos that's out on GitHub pages. Got Summit Talks on YouTube's, and we've got a block wiki on GitHub that's connected up to our blocks for the help. So this project started with Becca Westberg, with an initial block plan back in, or a doc plan back in September of 2023, and that led to the Getting Started section, which was written December that year. I wasn't here at this time, but something else happened. Something about it, accessibility or something, I'm not sure. The team was busy. Joe started to do a survey of developers in fall of 2024, and that was both Blockly technical things plus documentation questions. I was hired in October and spent a couple of months evaluating the docs, led to a doc plan in early January of this year, and I spent the last 4 months implementing parts of that doc plan. So the evaluation process, this was mostly what I did. I had one advantage. I was completely ignorant of Blockly. I had used Scratch before, but one of the things that you may have noticed is when you're learning a new product, you read the documentation, you go, what the heck are they talking about? You come back about 3 months later, you understand the project, and you say, this is brilliant documentation. And so one of the things I did was I took a lot of notes, saying everything that I didn't understand. So I read the developer guides from start to finish, wrote a bunch of toy applications. In the process of that, I used the reference documentation and also read a lot of code for where I couldn't figure things out otherwise. We also ranked pages by hits so that we would know where to concentrate our efforts. Looked through the existing doc plan, looked through the survey responses, and took a quick spin through the support questions, not too much deep in depth at that point. What we found was basically the Blockly team had done a decent job of writing documentation. It wasn't perfect. There were some places that just completely didn't make sense, but there was a lot of stuff that you read it once and you go, hey, I understand what's going on. I could write code from this. So there was room for improvements. One of the big things that was obvious is many of the API docs are incomplete. They don't really tell you much more than the method name and the arguments. And having docs in multiple locations was confusing. So some examples of the kinds of issues we found in this guides were some structural issues. We had some pages that were simply too big. Examples that define blocks. By the time you got to the end of that page, you had no idea what was at the top. We had some subjects that were spread across multiple pages, some information that was repeated in multiple pages, and we had some pages that we had completely unrelated topics sharing the same page. So those were things we needed to fix. Terminology issues. One of the big rules of technical writing is one concept, one term. And that's a complete one-to-one relationship, and we definitely violated it in a number of places. We had some terms with multiple meanings. The term input has like 5 to 7 different meanings in the docs. Yeah, you guys have seen that one. We have some things where the term conflicts with the actual meaning, and some of that's embedded in the API, so it's not changing. We had some concepts that were represented by multiple terms and some cases where the term was simply poorly defined or not defined at all. There were some clarity issues. Some pages, like the localization docs, they told you basically what was going on in the details, but they didn't give you an overview so that you understood where you were going. We had some critical background that wasn't explained. For example, it took me a long time before I finally realized that block definitions were mixins. It was one of these things, wow, these things are mixins. And then I finally saw something in the doc that says, hey, they're mixins. But I just read past that. Some of the writing was unclear. A good example of that was how do you change that message string in JSON into inputs, fields, and so on. We need to clarify that. And some topics we're missing altogether. One of the big ones there was for people who are just new to Blockly. What do you do with this thing? What is it? What's my role? What do I get out of it? How is it used in the real world? The survey responses were roughly the same as what my conclusions were. There were some specific asks. Wanted better plugin documentation on both how to use plugins and how to write them. People wanted better code examples. People were looking for information on integrating with other products such as React. They wanted that big picture information that I was just talking about. And another thing that people wanted was version information. What version was a given API introduced in and so on. That would be very helpful. So what did we do? So just like code, docs over time just sort of get a little crufty, and so you need to refactor them. That's just part of documentation life. So I partially reorganized the left-hand menu. It was stayed mostly the same, but we added a couple of design sections. Split up some of those topics that were too big, combined some of those subjects that were spread across multiple pages, and split up that content where we had unrelated content in the same page. Wrote and rewrote some docs, so the localization, part of the code generation and the block structure and JSON docs were completely rewritten from the bottom up. And I added a few crucial docs. That introductory page on Blockly applications, if you haven't looked at it, for at least some of you here, you've got pictures of your software that's in that. So you can go, ooh, that's me. Wrote a page on what is a block definition at a technical level, and a pictorial introduction to what's the anatomy of a block. Basically, when you have inputs, how do those things fit from your message? What does that look like, and how does that translate to what's on a block? Did some cleanup. I've started to standardize some terminology, fixed a whole bunch of minor bugs, and did a lot of minor rewriting. And so then the next thing is what's up next. First, we'll get the bad news first. Remember that 3600 API docs? So there's some things that simply we can't address because we don't have the resources. So the MDN style API docs, those are not coming anytime soon. Version information outside of the release notes, again, tracking down version information for 3600 topics and then adding it is simply not practical with the resources we have. On the survey, some people had wanted videos. Videos are really nice, but the problem is they're very expensive to produce. And when anything changes, if it's even slightly related to the whole video, you have to throw it away. So we're not going to be doing that. But what we are looking at doing is we'll continue to standardize some terminology, continue to fix bugs, looking at some new topics. A plugin code lab seems like a good bet. An overview of how the registry works. Headless Blockly, it's out there. It's not mentioned anywhere in the documentation. We'd like to, for technical reasons, we can't really move around the docs that are spread across multiple places, but we are looking at improving some of the links between those. Maybe using AI to go through the support questions, see if there's any commonalities of things that are popular problems that still aren't addressed by the documentation. And we're also thinking about adding code playgrounds. We haven't really looked at that yet, so we're not even sure what technology is out there that would be applicable for our systems that we're using. And that's where we're at. I hope you enjoy the documentation. It's slowly getting better and better. Questions?